And Vernon was born a couple of years after they were married.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years after they were married.
Okay, so that would place Vernon born about 1917 or 18. And Frances born, how much younger was Frances than Vernon?
Just about 2 years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's close enough.
Let me see. I'm trying to see how I'm about. I'm 83.
Uh-huh.
I'm about. I'm about 20 years older than Vernon, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
20 or 21. Yeah, I didn't know, but
okay.
It's so long.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's close enough. Was P.A. the oldest child of his mother? Dorothy told me that.
He had 2 sisters that were younger than him.
Right. So
I know he was older than them, but my grandmother had, I think, about 12 or 13 kids, but they all, died in infancy.
Ooh, goodness.
Yeah, except these 3.
Uh-huh.
They lived.
Okay.
But now, whether he was the eldest or not, I just don't know.
Uh-huh. But he was the oldest living child. He was the oldest child to survive. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so your grandmother brought P.A. and Carrie and another child to Austin. Emily. After Pinckney Ash Williams Sr.'s death in Brazoria. Where did your father go to school? Did he go to Tillotson?
Seems to me, let me see, where did he attend? That's gone from me.
Okay.
I know he took us out of junior high school and put us in Tillotson, but I just don't quite recall where he attended.
Mm-hmm.
It's been so long.
I know. I know it. Did your father encourage his children to go into business education? Was business...
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes. He was quite instrumental in us getting into business because he said it was entirely too many teachers down there. And he could sense, he recognized in other words that he could see the day coming when there was going to be a demand for, business people like secretaries and stenographers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he wanted us to be, in the business field. He didn't want us to teach.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted us to get education and get out of the South, because we'd have a better chance if we went up north.
Uh-huh.
That's what he did. After I finished high school, which was there in Tillotson, well, I took a 2-year business course, and having worked for the American Woodman, he sent me to Denver, Colorado to work for that organization.
Uh-huh.
And one by one, he said he wanted us to get educated and leave the South.
Uh-huh. Well, that's interesting. So he didn't think the South was the place for his children.
No, it was too much prejudice,
Mm-hmm.
down there. And he said we'd have a much better chance up in these parts, he thought.
Uh-huh. Well, he had vision, didn't he?
quite a bit of vision, and I thank him today because my nerves wouldn't have permitted me to teach.
Your what?
My nerves, not with
really?
kids. No, indeed, I'd have never made a teacher, so I thank him every day for his foresight.
Miss Douglas, I'd really like...
He's got a birthday. I mean, his anniversary date of his death is coming up soon. He died April the 1st. I remember that.
That's right. I would really like to tape record our conversation. Would that be all right with you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay with me.
Good.
You know, it's might be not exactly accurate, but it's, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, well, you're telling me good things about your father, Miss Douglas. This is real important to me. What were the pressures in the South that he wanted you to get away from? And what were the racial pressures? Do you remember any events that occurred?
Well, I remember, I'll never forget that NAACP affair when they, he was threatened, he being president of the NAACP, there was an instance. Something came up and a gentleman from New York, I think, of the crisis, came down to, sort of assist Mr. Shillady, and he was beaten up.
I thought it was Mr. Shillady who was beaten up.
I said, yeah, Mr. Shillady, said, yes.
So Mr. Shillady...
Blue Cluckers threw him off the train almost before he got off and beat him up, and my father had to run away and go in hiding because they were after him, too.
Ooh. Who else were they after? Do you remember?
No, I really do not.
So Mr. Shillady...
I was quite young,
Mr. Shillady came down from New York to help your father, is that right?
Well, he was trying, help to smooth things out, he held some kind of office, I think, in the NAACP, and he came down to try to help smooth things over. But he didn't make it because, as I say, those white fellows, got a inkling. Well, they were informed that he was coming down, so they were going to stop it, So as I said before, they waited until the train arrived and took him off. I can remember, and beat him up, and at the time, my father had an office with a minister, Reverend Haynes, and he threw Reverend Haynes the keys and told him he had to go in hiding, and to have me to come and take care of the business for him. So that's what happened. We didn't know where my daddy was for 2 or 3 weeks, I guess it was. At least he didn't show up until after then. But, it had sort of blown over them, and when he did come out of hiding, well, they didn't bother him, So that's one incident. I mean, as I say...
Do you remember any other incidents that occurred that made you believe that your father was right to tell you to leave the South?
No, that was a major one. Not really, no,
Okay. No. So this Mr. Shillady came to smooth things out. What do you mean smooth things out? Had there been problems before?
Well, I guess so, I guess so.
Okay.
I guess. My brother in Houston, I guess he could tell you more about that because he, in coming along, he was made president of the NAACP there in Houston, and Looks like burning crosses in his yard and everything. They were after him, you know. But he's often said to me, he said, because Gladys, I'm going to stand my ground. I'm not going to run like Papa did 20 years ago. So, as I said, Francis would remember, you know, more about that than me.
Well, I would like to talk to Francis, and I'm planning to call him. But I wanted to talk to you first because you have 20 years on him, and I thought those memories, I believe the memories that you have will help me. So I'm going to talk to all of you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So your father encouraged all of his children to get into some sort of business education endeavor.
Yes.
What about the boys?
Well, he wanted them to enter business too, you know. Yeah.
Did they?
Well, Francis, Vernon never did go into a business because he definitely believed that being black, he was, he was permitted not to pass the bar. See, they went away. I mean, yes, he took law, and I think it was Lincoln University. Well, anyways, he finished the bar, and he took the exam, and in the meantime, Francis had come out of the army, and he took the law, too, because they wanted to be partners. But when Vernon took the exam, they didn't pass him, but Vernon always will believe, he said that he knows he passed it because he knew what he had, you know. They gave him 69, and he said it was just because of the fact that he was black that they didn't pass him, but he said he knows he passed. Well, that discouraged him. But Francis, having been in the reserved army, he didn't have to take the exam, and he just automatically got a permit to what do you call it? To pass. Yeah, a license. He just automatically got a license to practice. So he had to practice alone because we never could get Vernon interested enough in taking again. So he just continued to go and work on the docks down there, you know, in Galveston, Texas.
Well, was he the one who was the lawyer for the union down there in Galveston? Does that ring a bell to you? Or was it another brother?
Well, Vernon not having passed, it must not have been Vernon, because as I say, Vernon didn't pass the bar.
Okay.
Francis.
Yeah, Francis was the one who started the practice.
Yeah.
Well, what did you do? What was your career?
Well, after I went to Denver as a secretary stenographer, and I stayed there about 4.5 years, and then I came here to Chicago and got married. And I worked around for various companies until, I got something permanent to do. I got into an insurance company and worked. And then after my husband died in 1941, well, I had a little daughter to support, so I had to leave here because I had to go back to work, you know. I went to Washington, D.C., where I had a sister, and she had a daughter who would look after my daughter, you know, when I returned to work. And so happened, I made applications around, never did secure anything, but just so happened the war broke out. and I took an examination and passed, and I got into the government then.
Uh-huh.
And I stayed there until I guess about 65 or 66. And then I came back to Chicago to keep house for an elderly cousin of mine.
Uh-huh.
His wife had passed, and he wanted me to come back and keep house for him. So that's what I did, and I returned here, and I happened to finally get into the Veterans Administration to work in the government.
Uh-huh.
So I stayed there, and I retired. With 30 years of government service, I retired.
30 years. That was a long time.
Yeah.
What did Dorothy do in California? What was her job? Did she use her business education?
Well, I know she worked in the school system out there. She headed, she was head of the cashier or something in the school department in the cafeteria out there, as far as I can remember. She would know, remember that. She worked in the cafeteria out there, and then she worked for the disabled children, some school institution, another that, had the disabled kids, handicapped, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know just where, because she would, she would know where she worked there.
Well, so your father insisted that all of his children, especially the girls, learn business skills so that they would have that skill to use in another part of the country besides in the South. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What, when you think about your father, what do you think was his primary business endeavor? What did he spend the most time doing?
He was just interested he was such a busybody, interested in all walks. I mean, you see, he was real estate. He's in the real estate business, and he was in the Notary Republic and all. He just dabbed around and did everything. He was just
what did he do in real estate?
Sold property. He would sell property.
Did he also manage rent property for his friends?
Oh, yeah.
Seems like I heard that from Dorothy, maybe.
What?
It seems like I heard from Dorothy that he managed some rent property for friends when they would leave office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I said. He would handle rental property, and he would sell property.
He was a prominent man in the American Woodmen, was he not?
Oh, yeah.
What did he do for the Woodmen?
Well, he was clerk of the camp there, and they call them camps, the office, the local office there. He headed the office there in Austin, Texas.
Was that a pretty prestigious job?
Was it what?
Was that a pretty important job?
Oh, yes, because that was Austin camp was the largest in the jurisdiction. We had about 1,500 members. Yes, it was quite important. Yes.
Do you think that was one of the reasons why people respected your father so much?
Well, I guess so, I know he was well liked all over the city. And even the fry company that when he went into business, this packing house up in Nelson Davis, he was quite fond of my father. Quite fond of my daddy.
Why did he like your father so much?
business-like, I guess, and so brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want him to quit, but as my daddy told him, he said, no, this is a stepping stone. I got a chance to advance now. I'll have to leave you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But just, I guess it's because of his brilliancy, I suppose. He was just smart.
Mm-hmm.
He could do any and everything, because I remember he used to sew our shoes, and he just did some of everything.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a smart man.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what did he remain as president of the NAACP?
I believe they finally replaced him. I think. I'm not for sure to say that.
Did he stay active? Did he stay active in that organization after he was no longer president?
As far as I can remember, it's been so long, I've just forgotten.
Well, is it your impression that he formed the local chapter of the NAACP here in Austin? Did he organize it, or was he just one of the presidents? Do you know?
No, I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that.
I want you to tell me why you thought your dad was such a successful businessman and person.
Why he was so successful?
Why do you think he was so successful?
Well, I suppose he was a Christian. He believed in church. You know, he was a staunch Christian, and
what church did
his brilliancy, I suppose, and made him succeed.
What church did he go to? You remember? I believe the name of it was the First Baptist, I think. I'm not sure. First Baptist Church, First Baptist, I think. I'm not for sure. Okay. Now,
I know he was Baptist and my mother was Methodist, but we all went to my mother's church.
I see.
We were all Methodist.
All right. When you went to Denver to work with the American Woodmen, did you work with E.W.D. Abner?
Oh, yeah, I worked with E.W.D. Abner then also, you know, before he even goes. Abner was our family physician.
How did you work with him? How did you work with him here in Austin?
Well, I used to do correspondence for him. Some correspondence when his secretary was there. And when he went to Denver, of course, and I got there, he didn't want nobody else to work for him but me.
And did you do that?
Oh, yes, I was forced to do that. Partly responsible for me getting the job, and he knew me, you know. He didn't want anybody else to do his work but me. And then Mr. White, I don't remember much about Mr. White. He proceeded, he was head of the Woodmen. I don't remember much about him, but I do know that he was quite fond of my daddy, you know, and he helped, encourage my father there in the camp at the Woodmen, there in Austin, Texas. I don't know much about him, but he preceded Mr. Light and Mr. Abner at the Woodmen. He was, I guess, the old pillar. He was the cornerstone.
Oh, he was? Mr. White was?
White, C.M. White, yes.
What was his name?
Cassius M. White.
Cassius?
C-A-S-S-I-U-S. Cassius M. White.
And he was the Supreme Commander here in Austin before Leitner and Abner?
Yeah, he was before Leitner.
Okay. How did your dad get the clerkship with the Woodmen? Do you know?
No, I just don't.
Okay.
I just really don't know.
I was just wondering if anybody encouraged him.
I just don't know whether it was Mr. White or not. I just don't remember. I don't know.
Okay. I want to know more about Dr. Abner. How long did you work for him, and why did he go to Denver?
Well, he was the physician. You see, as you became a member, you had to pass a physical. And he used to be the physician for the Woodman team. And I don't know, it seemed to me somebody died, and they selected him as to be the supreme physician of the Woodman. And of course, that naturally caused him to give up his practice in Austin and go to Denver to be in the office there.
And how long did he remain the supreme physician of the Woodman?
Well, until he died. I don't know just how long that was.
About when did he die?
I just don't remember. I just don't. I don't think so, as I can remember. I don't think so. He lived too long after he went to Denver. I don't think. As I said before, it's so long. I just don't remember.
Do you happen to know where he went to medical school?
Where he went? No, I don't know where his medical school was. I just don't know.
What was his wife's name? Do you know?
Well, I know she was a teacher in Austin. She was, her name was Maud. But I don't know, after his death in Denver, I don't know what happened to her. I don't know whether, I just don't know what happened to her.
So you think he did die in Denver?
Yeah, Dr. Abner, yes.
Okay. Did this man Nelson Davis help your dad get started in business after your dad decided to leave Nelson Davis?
Well, I think he encouraged him, after he saw he definitely was going to leave him. I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because, let's see, quite fond of my father, and then having so many children, he helped him in so many ways.
How did he help him?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you see, he owned this packing company, packing firm. And just give my daddy so much, Canned goods, just some of everything. Just send loads, carloads of things down there to the daughter, to my father, for us. Christmas time, we had most dolls and candies and whatnot, and we used to have so much canned goods. We used to play house with some of it. I wish I had some of it now. Well, we did, because we just kept our shelves loaded up. Yeah, he helped P.A. Williams all he possibly could. We just wasted so much of it because we had so much of it, Feed the community, liquid candy, and
oh my goodness.
all that stuff.
So, how else did he help your dad? Can you think of other ways? You said that he gave him encouragement, and he sent a lot of food and toys and candy for the children. Can you think of other ways that he helped?
Well, money-wise, I just don't know. But I know whenever someone, I know he used to refer recommendations. I mean, my daddy, he always referred to have my daddy recommend people. If someone came to the city or came to work for him or something, he'd always consult my father, to see if he knew him, see what his background was, what he thought about him and everything.
I'm taking notes. That's why I pause every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. One more question. When did your grandmother bring the 3 children to Austin? Do you know?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Francis that maybe.
Yeah, maybe you might know.
All right. Well, I really appreciate very much your talking to me, Miss Douglas. This is going to be an exhibit at a museum, and P.A. Williams is one of the people who will be a candidate who might be chosen to be exhibited.
I see.
We're looking for photographs and things that tell about him, and tell about his life as a businessman. Can you think of anything that you have, any photographs that we could have copied that you think would be particularly good?
I don't have anything because, as I said, 2 years ago I was robbed and attacked here.
Oh gosh.
And I was beaten up pretty badly. And I really didn't think I was going to live, but I survived it. And all my things and records was just destroyed. You know, my daughter had to come in, close my apartment out, so I have nothing.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's, said my Bible with all my dates and everything in them, marriages and my daddy's birth and all that, they were all destroyed. So
oh, that is terrible.
the thing I had to go in this memory is sort of sharp because I was struck on the head, And just don't have anything. I don't. Dorothy might have something.
Yes, she's shown me some really nice pictures. I just thought I'd ask you, too, to see if you had anything.
I had something, but as I said, all that had to be destroyed after I was attacked.
Yeah. Well, you've given me a lot of information, Miss Douglas, and I really appreciate it. We will send we'll send you an invitation to the exhibit. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I enjoyed talking to you.
Now, I might say, which is interest I'm quite proud of, Vernon, after he didn't pass the bar, he encouraged and kept his children in school. And of that union, 2 kids were born. One is, in fact, both of them's here now because Vernon, the boy, just came to town yesterday. He has a PhD, I think, in history.
Oh, wonderful.
His son, Vernon, he has a PhD, and his daughter's quite successful in the government. She has about, about 14 or 15 years. She came here first because of the fact that I was here. She'd have a relative. And she is quite brilliant, both of them, in fact. And,
well, your family has really carried on that tradition, haven't they?
Yes, and neither one of them are married.
Oh.
And he's a professor. Well, he's now in Rhode Island. That's where he is. Providence, Rhode Island. And, of course, she works out here. She travels for the government.
Well, you've given me good information, Miss Douglas, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. Nice talking to you.
Okay, nice talking to you, too.
Yes,
Take care of you. I'm sorry?
Just say I learned a few things that I didn't even know about myself, my family.
Well, that's always fun to do, isn't it? Well, now you take care of yourself.
As I say, I'm sorry I didn't know anything about my grandparents, but the only one I knew is my father's mother because, as I can remember, she had the 3 children, but no husband when I knew her then also, But I do know they were from Missouri and owned property there because my daddy used to go down every year and pay the taxes on it, But, so that
Well, you've given me good information. I've learned a lot from you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
I'll be glad when you talk to Francis because he's the one that has the memory.
Okay, I'll talk to him and I'll tell him you said that.
All right, now the best time, of course, is to say if you call him at that office, you might not be able to get him and you might not have time to talk. The best thing is to call him at home, you know.
Okay, I'll do that.
Get his residence.
Okay,
All
I've got
right.
that number. All right, bye-bye.
Okay. Bye now.